Vladimir Putin has ruled Russia for over 2 decades. He projects an image of strength, but behind this facade lies a deep fear. Putin is afraid of his own people. He fears a popular uprising that could end his grip on power. Putin has seen what happened in other former Soviet republics. He witnessed the fall of leaders in Georgia, Ukraine, and Kyrgyzstan. These revolutions were fueled by popular discontent. They were driven by a desire for democracy and freedom. These events have shaped Putin's worldview. He sees any sign of dissent as a threat. He believes that the West is actively trying to undermine his rule. This paranoia has led him to take extreme measures to suppress any opposition. Putin's fear of an uprising is a driving force behind his domestic and foreign policies. It explains his crackdown on dissent, his interference in neighboring countries, and his aggressive stance on the world stage. The revolutions that have swept through the former Soviet Union have one thing in common: people power. These movements were largely non-violent. They were driven by ordinary citizens demanding change. In 2003, Georgia experienced the Rose Revolution. Protests erupted over a disputed election. The people took to the streets, demanding democracy and an end to corruption. The movement was successful. It led to the resignation of President Eduard Shevardnadze. The Orange Revolution in Ukraine followed in 2004. Again, a rigged election sparked massive protests. Ukrainians demanded a fair vote and a move towards Europe. The protests forced a rerun of the election. Viktor Yushchenko, the pro-Western candidate, emerged victorious. These revolutions sent a powerful message to Putin. They showed the fragility of authoritarian regimes. They demonstrated the power of peaceful protest, and they highlighted the desire for democracy in the region. Belarus, under the rule of Alexander Lukashenko, has become a cautionary tale for Putin. Lukashenko, often dubbed Europe's last dictator, has clung to power through brutal repression. He has crushed any opposition, rigged elections, and silenced independent media. In 2020, Belarus witnessed its own wave of protests. The catalyst was a fraudulent presidential election. Hundreds of thousands of Belarusians took to the streets, demanding Lukashenko's resignation. These protests were met with a brutal crackdown. The regime responded with violence, arrests, and torture. Despite the risks, the Belarusian people showed incredible courage and resilience. They continued to protest, demanding change. Lukashenko, however, managed to cling to power. He received support from Putin, who feared a similar uprising in Russia. The events in Belarus reinforced Putin's belief that any sign of dissent must be crushed. They showed him the importance of controlling the media, suppressing opposition, and maintaining a tight grip on power. The 2014 Revolution of Dignity in Ukraine was a turning point for Putin. It confirmed his worst fears. Ukrainians once again took to the streets to demand democracy and closer ties with Europe. This time, the protests were met with violence from the government. Despite the bloodshed, the Ukrainian people persevered. They forced their pro-Russian president Viktor Yanukovych to flee the country. Putin saw the Ukrainian revolution as a direct threat. He viewed it as a Western-orchestrated coup. It fueled his paranoia about foreign interference and the vulnerability of his own regime. Putin responded with military force, annexing Crimea and supporting separatists in eastern Ukraine. The Ukrainian revolution showed Putin the potential consequences of allowing dissent to fester. Section 5, Georgia, a struggle for democracy. Georgia's Rose Revolution in 2003 sent shockwaves through the Kremlin. The sight of a former Soviet republic embracing democracy was deeply unsettling for Putin. He saw it as a challenge to his vision of a Russian-dominated sphere of influence. Georgia's path towards democracy has been fraught with challenges. Russia has repeatedly interfered in its internal affairs. It has supported separatist movements. It launched a full-scale invasion in 2008. Despite these obstacles, Georgia has made progress towards democracy. It has held free and fair elections. It has strengthened its institutions. However, the threat from Russia remains. Putin sees a democratic Georgia as a threat to his interests. He fears its potential to inspire similar movements within Russia itself. Section 6. The Kremlin's playbook: disinformation and suppression. Putin's fear of an uprising has led him to create a sophisticated system of control. He understands that information is power. The Kremlin controls the media, spreading propaganda and disinformation. It paints a rosy picture of Russia under Putin's rule. Independent media outlets are silenced. Journalists who dare to criticize the government face harassment, intimidation, and even imprisonment. The internet is heavily censored. Websites and social media platforms that challenge the Kremlin's narrative are blocked. Opposition figures are targeted. They are imprisoned on trumped-up charges, forced into exile, or silenced through other means. Protests are swiftly dispersed. Laws have been passed that make it virtually impossible to organize demonstrations without facing severe consequences. Putin's regime has created an environment of fear and intimidation. It aims to discourage any form of dissent before it can even take root. Section 7. The price of dissent. In Putin's Russia, speaking out against the government carries a heavy price. Alexei Navalny, the most prominent opposition leader, is a stark example. Navalny bravely exposed corruption within the government. He organized protests and rallied people against Putin's rule. The Kremlin's response was swift and brutal. Navalny was poisoned with a nerve agent. He barely survived the attack. Upon his return to Russia after recovering abroad, he was immediately arrested. Navalny was sentenced to years in prison on fabricated charges. His story is not unique. Countless other Russians have faced similar fates for daring to challenge the regime. Journalists, activists, and ordinary citizens have been targeted for their dissent. The message is clear. Opposition to Putin will not be tolerated. Section 8. A world on edge. Putin's fear of an uprising has profound implications for the world. It has fueled his aggressive foreign policy. It has led to the invasion of Ukraine and the annexation of Crimea. Putin sees the West as a threat, constantly seeking to undermine his rule. He believes that the West is behind the color revolutions in the former Soviet Union. Putin's paranoia has led him to isolate Russia from the rest of the world. He has cracked down on civil society, limited freedom of speech, and imprisoned opponents. Russia has become a pariah state, sanctioned by the international community for its actions. Putin's fear has made the world a more dangerous place. It has increased tensions between Russia and the West. It has led to a new Cold War, with both sides amassing military forces and engaging in dangerous brinkmanship. Section 9. The future of Russia's fear. Putin's fear of an uprising is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more he tightens his grip on power, the more he fuels the very discontent he fears. The Russian people are not blind to the corruption, inequality, and lack of freedom that plague their country. The economic situation in Russia is dire. Sanctions, coupled with government mismanagement, have led to a decline in living standards. The war in Ukraine has further exacerbated the situation. The Russian people are growing increasingly weary of Putin's rule. They are tired of war, corruption, and repression. The question is not if, but when, this discontent will boil over into open revolt. Putin's fear of an uprising has become a defining characteristic of his rule. It has shaped his policies, his worldview, and his legacy. Only time will tell how this fear will ultimately play out. But one thing is certain: the future of Russia hangs in the balance.